Your car breaks down on the side of the road. Engine light, dead silence, strangers driving past. Most people feel one thing immediately: helpless. They grab their phone, they call someone, they wait for another person to explain what's wrong with their own machine. But there are people who don't do that. You might know one of them. You might be one of them. The hood goes up, they lean in, not panicking, not frustrated. Something almost calm settles into their face, like the problem is familiar, like this is what they were built for. And here's what nobody talks about. That calm didn't come from knowing about cars. It came from something much deeper. That difference between the person grabbing their phone and the person leaning into the engine is worth examining, because it was never really about the car. It never was. Something changes in a person when they learn to understand a machine this complex. It doesn't happen in a class. It doesn't happen from a YouTube video. It happens in a driveway, on a cold Saturday with grease on your knuckles and a problem that won't cooperate. That environment does something specific to you. It teaches you that complicated things have logic, that if you stay with something long enough, it will show you what it needs. That's not a lesson about cars, that's a lesson about life, and people who have it carry it everywhere. Here's what's actually happening when you diagnose an engine. You're not just gathering information, you're building a model in your head of a system you cannot see. You're holding sound, smell, feel, history, all at once, cross-referencing them against something you didn't learn from a book. Neuroscientists call this embodied cognition. Your hands and your brain are operating as one unit. The knowledge isn't stored in language, it's stored in muscle, in pattern recognition, in the silence that follows when a bolt finally seats correctly. Ask someone who knows how to work on cars how they knew something was wrong. They'll pause. They'll say something like, "It just felt off." They're not being vague, they're being completely accurate. The knowledge lives below words, and that makes it more reliable, not less. This is why people who work with their hands often outperform people who only think with their heads. The thinking and the doing are merged. The feedback loop is tight and immediate. You try something, the machine responds. You adjust. You try again. No quarterly review, no committee decision. Just reality telling you whether you're right or wrong right now. People who have this skill develop a specific relationship with authority, specifically a skeptical one. Not because they're difficult, because they've been proven right when the experts were wrong, when the diagnostic tool said one thing and their hands said another, and their hands were correct. Over time, you stop trusting confidence that hasn't been earned through contact. You become skeptical of people who speak loudly about things they've never physically touched. From the outside, this looks like stubbornness, like pride. It isn't. It's an epistemology. A way of knowing that was forged through first-hand experience, through problems that only surrendered after patient, direct attention. You also develop a different relationship with time. Mechanical work cannot be rushed. There are sequences, there are specifications. Cut a corner and the problem comes back, usually worse. This teaches something increasingly rare, that some things have their own timeline, and that timeline doesn't care about your schedule. People who internalize this become unusually patient, unusually suspicious of anything that promises a quick fix. Most people who know how to work on cars didn't learn alone. There was someone, a parent in a garage on a weekend afternoon, an older neighbor who didn't say much, an uncle who handed you a wrench and waited, a grandfather who kept an old truck running long past the point anyone else would have given up. No curriculum, no lesson plan. Just proximity to someone who already knew, and the quiet transmission of something harder to name than a skill. What was being passed down wasn't just mechanical knowledge, it was a relationship to difficulty, a way of sitting with a problem that didn't involve walking away from it, a tolerance for not knowing, paired with a faith you'd figure it out if you stayed. The car was the medium, the real content was something else entirely. This is why car knowledge becomes identity in a way that other skills don't. When you learn something through relationship, through a real person who showed rather than explained, it carries emotional weight. The first car you worked on is remembered with biographical specificity, not because of the car, but because of who was in that garage with you, and what era of your life was being figured out at the same time. People often misread those who have this skill. They see the self-sufficiency and think it means they don't want help. They see the quiet competence and read it as indifference. They see the confidence and assume it's about cars. It's not about cars. What's actually operating underneath is something psychologists call an internal locus of control. The belief, deep and encoded through experience, that outcomes are shaped primarily by your own effort and attention, not by luck, not by other people's decisions, not by circumstance. This belief changes everything. It changes how you approach a problem, how you respond to setbacks, how long you stay before you give up, how much credit you give yourself when something works, how much responsibility you take when it doesn't. It doesn't mean you never need help. It means you begin from a different assumption, that the situation is probably figurable out, that staying with it is worth something, that your own attention has value. That belief was not given to anyone, it was built, one solved problem at a time in a specific place with tools in hand. There is one more thing worth naming. Working on a car is one of the only spaces left where you can be completely, verifiably right. Think about the rest of life. Did the meeting go well? Hard to say. Was the decision correct? Depends on who you ask. Is the project good? Open to interpretation. But an engine that wasn't running and now is running, that is not a matter of opinion. The feedback is absolute, binary, real. For people who spend most of their days in ambiguous, subjectively evaluated environments, the garage is almost radical. It offers a bounded problem with a knowable solution, a place where reality will tell you the truth. This is why people return to mechanical work when life gets complicated, when institutions fail, when relationships get murky, when the future feels opaque. The engine is still solvable, and solving it restores something that the rest of the week may have quietly eroded. Not just the skill, the feeling of competence, the experience of being someone who figures things out. What looks like a hobby is a coping strategy. What looks like mechanical skill is a psychological one. What looks like someone who knows about cars is actually someone who learned, in the most physical, irreversible way, that the world gives way to patient attention. You may not work on cars. That's not the point. The point is the person in that driveway, hood up, problem in front of them. Not panicking, not calling someone immediately, not scrolling for a solution, just looking, thinking, staying. What was built in that moment had nothing to do with engines. It had to do with what kind of person they were going to be when things broke down. And things always break down. Cars, careers, relationships, plans, systems you trusted. The people who were trained, even unknowingly, to stay and figure things out, they respond differently when that happens. Not because they're tougher, because they have proof. Proof they collected themselves, in a garage with their own hands, that problems yield to patient attention. That proof doesn't expire. And here is the question worth sitting with. There is something in your life right now that isn't working, something you've been circling, something you've been hoping someone else will come along and solve, something where you keep walking away before it reveals itself. What if you already have everything you need to figure it out? What if the only thing missing is the willingness to stay with it long enough? If this spoke to you, share it with someone who gets their hands dirty. But there's another kind of person entirely, someone who doesn't just fix what's broken. They bring it back. People who restore classic cars. That's a completely different psychology, and it goes much deeper. That video is right there.